So the U.S. is heavily bombing Iran right now.
I am good. All things considering.
Oh no! First, I appreciate you covering for
Yeah,
me. I had time to. I had to go to do some freaking fitness again. So, like,
Yeah,
asking-
you're doing it for both of us. I haven't had time to work out since my toddler was born. So
Well, I don't have any toddlers, so I don't have the same responsibility.
she was just in here. That's why I'm a few minutes late. She wasn't leaving. So unless
That's
you
right,
want
just
me to have a
thought
partner,
She's welcome anytime. That she can crash the interview
she
anytime.
will
honestly, no
too.
problem.
She will. She's a rising star.
But funny enough, I was literally, I was happy. I was like, okay, I can get out, I can do some fitness,
You can
move
have
a
a
bit.
life again.
And then I'm like, thank you, I love you so much. And then I check my phone, see how things are going. Explosion. I had to rush back.
Explosion.
Well, Karen, I don't know if you caught my interview with her, but she basically thinks ultimately this is going to fizzle out because logistically, and she's not wrong on this, logistically, we're basically running out of stuff. And she thinks, at least it sounds like she thinks, Trump's going to deplete us basically to zero in terms of weapons and probably also the SPR. And then at that point, we'll sue.
I agree with that. Trump is desperate. He does not want to surrender to Iran, and so he's going to try absolutely everything to avoid that. And yeah, he's going to bring U.S. weapons to zero to to try to take out Iran. It's going to fail, but he's going to do it. And that's going to leave the United States in a terrible position. It's basically giving Taiwan to Taiwan to China. It's basically giving Taiwan to China.
For some kind of a ceasefire, we'll actually respect it and use that time of ceasefire to rearm and reacquire targets. And I don't know. Because we also talked about the possibility of unintended escalation, as in nuclear escalation. I don't know, and you can't take that off the table here because none of this is planned.
Yeah, if Trump has a choice between surrendering to Iran and using a nuke, he might use a nuke. We just have to trust that there's a system in place to prevent that from happening. And someone manages to talk Trump out of it.
None of this is planned.
I was having a conversation with Aaron David Miller just before Karen. And asked him, by the way, just for the audience, give him a quick update. So there's explosions across Iran right now, even deeper into Iran. I saw reports of some of the cities deep into Iran, like Kandab and Markazi.
140 targets is what I was told.
Holy shit. 100, sorry, okay. Yeah, 140 targets. It's not that many. I misunderstood what you meant.
It's a fair amount.
Yeah, so
it's not nothing. It's not nothing.
Yeah, but it's in line with the last few days of what we're seeing. It's a big attack. Not the attacks, not the ferocity of the attacks that we see.
No, but
also it's 140 so far.
It is the largest. It is the largest since
these last few days. Yeah. Since the ceasefire. But this time around, what worries me is that they're deeper into Iran. So I asked a question for Aaron, who's obviously a veteran in Middle East negotiations for decades, worked under the Democrats and Republicans, and his concern is he does agree with what Karen and obviously that's my stance as well, is that the U.S. cannot afford this, but he does have a worry with this, the law of unintended consequences, that both sides, and you give always the example of World War I, that both sides never planned for World War I. World War I was initially called the Balkan Crisis, if I'm not mistaken.
The third Balkan crisis.
Exactly, and it ended up being a world war. So this is a concern that we have here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, exactly right. And it's not just escalation in Iran, and I know we want to focus on that, but I did spend, I think, more time than was planned, but I did spend a lot of time talking about Ukraine with Karen, because increasingly, whether it's intentional or not, we're seeing when Russia is escalating in Ukraine, we're escalating in Iran. And I'm not saying there's causality there. There could be. I'm just saying that there's escalation everywhere right now in these two theaters of the war. And it's unintended.
I have a question for you on the Ukraine war. By the way, there's explosions as we speak in Bandar Abbas again, in Ahvaz, in Mashbar in the last few minutes, in Sirik, in Jabr. So all of them in southern Iran. There's reports of ones deeper into Iran. I'm waiting for confirmation, because that will be, again, another those escalatory steps. Iran struck other Gulf countries as their way of escalating. The US might have struck deeper targets within Iran as their way of escalating. Now, my question to you about Ukraine is, there's a statement that Peskov made. Remember me and you discussed on whether the Americans would agree to, the Russians would agree to a deal similar to what was rumored to be agreed on in Alaska in that summit, which is the Ukrainians give up the Donbass and agree to either freeze the lines in Kherson and Zaporizhia or give those up.
No, I don't think that's possible anymore. Russia has basically conquered all of Donbass. They're on the verge of that. It will be done this summer. So Ukraine would just be giving up what they've already lost. it's not really a concession on Ukraine's part anymore to give up the Donbass. So it can't be part of the negotiations.
And some of my guests have said no, and they talk about Novorossiya. Is that what?
Novorossiya.
Yeah. Novorossiya.
And which includes Kharkiv all the way down to Odessa. And Peskov said something 2 days ago. I'm not sure if you caught it.
About the deal. Yeah.
He essentially said, I want to get the exact semi, but he essentially said that all that if Zelensky just pulls out of the Donbass, and I think he hinted about the other Oblast, but he was clear about the Donbass, and the war would be over tomorrow. I'll read it out exactly here. Zelensky.
I think that was not a real offer. A few months ago, 6 months ago, maybe, it could have been the end of it to withdraw from Donbass. But now the war has moved beyond that. Russia will be taking a lot more than the Donbass.
Came to Peskov, the Russian spokesperson. Zelensky came to power and promised his people that he would end the war. That was his original promise. And he can still end the war by making the very responsible decision to withdraw his troops from Donbass, from the regions that have now become part of Russia. And by recognizing this from the regions and by recognizing the situation that has already become de facto and de jure, the next day the war would be over. So my question to you on that front, and for the audience, we'll go back to Iran in a second after I ask that question on Russia, because it's pretty important too. We'll go back to the updates on what's happening on the ground in Iran, on the strikes that are ongoing now and what led to them. But just one more question on Russia, Brandon. What do you make of that statement?
I think the Russians have been very consistent. The Russians are not the crazy ones in this fight. We are. The Russians, yes, they would certainly love, I think, to take everything up to Odessa, and I think they're willing to do that if they feel they have to. And we're at that point almost where they're going to.
I think we're already at that point.
Try it, but I think that in a sane world, if the Ukrainians accepted the deal that Peskov, clearly speaking for the Kremlin, not just going to Peskov, if Zelensky met and agreed to those terms, I think the war would be over tomorrow. The Russians, I think, fundamentally are looking at this war as a war of strategic buffers. So as long as they get Crimea and as long as they get those Russian-speaking oblasts in the east, anything beyond that is just gravy, and they don't necessarily have to fight for that as long as the core.
I disagree. We've reached a point where now with these long-range drones, if they don't create a buffer zone up here, any ceasefire, United States and Ukraine and Europe will stockpile a bunch of drones and then launch them really deep into Russia once they have a big stockpile built up and overwhelm Russia's air defense. Europe is already on a war footing with Russia. They'll find some excuse to start sending drones into Russia again, even if there is a ceasefire. Unless Kiev, the regime in Ukraine, is taken out, there will be no peace in Ukraine.
Or is taken of those areas, they're happy. And that's always been their stance, though, since 2014, actually.
And I believe right up to about 6 months ago, it was legitimate. Now, I think, when Russia is saying, Zelensky to end this tomorrow, I don't know if that's true anymore. There's so much anger on Russian side over the long-range drone strikes. And the Ukraine dragged out the fight until Russia had almost taken all of Donbass. And after dragging the fight out that long, they then withdraw from the tiny section they still control. And that's supposed to be concession? No.
And it's always been the West that has these very maximalist visions of, well, no, we have to get Crimea back and into the Ukrainian fold. And no, we have to get all Russian elements out of the East and return it to the Ukrainian control. And these are just maximalist demands. So I think that if Ukraine actually did agree to that, yes, I think the war would be over. I don't believe Ukraine can or will agree to that under Zelensky or the.
That's why I think Russia is making the offer at this point. Withdraw from Donbass and there could be peace tomorrow. They're only making that offer at this point in time because they know Zelensky won't take it. Because if Zelensky actually did suddenly, we're withdrawing troops from Donbass, Russia would actually be in a tough position because there are so many in Russia that are furious that stopping everything here is not really an option, I don't think, on the Russian side anymore.
Banda rights. I just don't.
So let's go to what's happening.
I just also real quick, because there's connective tissue. Just real quick, there was an interesting story late last night out of Beirut. I don't know if you saw it, but apparently a Mossad agent was given shelter in the Ukrainian embassy in Beirut and was then he was, I think, about to be arrested by Lebanese authorities. But we don't know why. No reason was given. Obviously, I think it's had to do with spying. The Ukrainians, under their diplomatic cover, moved him from their embassy in Beirut back to Israel. We don't know what the details beyond that are.
Interesting. First I hear about this.
But it's not widely reported. And I just want to say on some level, there is some, and I can't put my finger on it, there is some bizarre connectivity between what's happening in Ukraine and what's happening in the Middle East. And I'll just leave it there and we can shift to what's going on in the Middle East.
All right, so we're getting more explosions across cities in southern Iran just now, Sirik, as well as reports unconfirmed.
Well, there is a basic connectivity between the two in that it's a deep state, U.S. deep state, that's going after both Russia and Iran. And they need to win in one of them to keep the U.S. hegemony going a few more years. And so if things go bad in one section, they get more desperate to win in the other. That could be it.
Preliminary reports that claim that Ahvaz Airport was targeted. I don't think Ahvaz Airport was struck. I'll have to check if it was struck since the ceasefire. Now, how did we get here? So we've covered what happened yesterday, and some of us had the hope that today will be a quieter day. Ironically, today was actually initiated by Iran. So Iran initiated the first attack, which is the first time this happens since the ceasefire, by striking the, I think, HIMARS missile systems or ATACMS. I think it's HIMARS in Kuwait. And precision strikes. I was debating with one of my guests earlier. They were telling me about Iran's capabilities of being able to strike and hit targets in the region in the Gulf. That they don't have those capabilities. Otherwise, they would have struck. And they were making the point they would have struck all the civilian infrastructure. I'm like, no, because we've just seen an example this morning of them striking an exact missile system with 3 missiles that landed.
Iran precisely struck. You had a bunch of U.S. aircraft stationed at this airbase here on the tarmac, and Iranian drones took out I think half a dozen refueling tankers and an AWACS, the 747s that have built-in radar systems into them that the United States is using to detect threats in the Gulf, because Iran's taken out all the ground-based radar systems near Iran. So they could precisely hit targets over here. They could precisely hit targets over here. A lot easier.
And destroyed it. So that's what.
And I can give you, I can provide, there is plenty of evidence proving that China is using their satellites to range these targets. But more importantly, the factor of human intelligence. Iran has not only.
We know that Iran acquired a Chinese satellite. They have full access to it for doing their targeting.
Their agents on the ground, hiding in the population, helping to range these targets. But they have locals they've hired out and farmed out these identification missions to. We saw that in Bahrain during the initial phase of the war, where they were able to identify the Hilton hotel that the U.S. Personnel from the base in Bahrain. Yeah, so they absolutely have these capabilities. And again, Mario, to get to something you and I talked about repeatedly, clearly the Iranians are not interested in going willy-nilly in the region. They're being very focused on what they want to hit. This is a calibrated strategy on their end, which indicates, and this is a good thing, they're not the crazy head-chopping people everybody in D.C. says they are. They're a professional military, and they're serious about, escalating on their terms, not escalating because the situation has overcome them.
So I'm just checking if the airport was struck. No, so Ahvaz Airport was not hit since the April ceasefire. Last time it was hit was just before the ceasefire on April 5th. So that would be the first time Ahvaz Airport would be hit, another form of escalatory or escalation trap or escalation ladder. Now, let's go back to how we got here before we go into what's being struck right now. So that was the first thing that the Iranians did, was strike that missile system that was used, by the way, by the Americans in the last 48 hours to strike Iran from Kuwait. We've talked about this. Then we got reports of American strikes on Iran, and they said that Iran fired at the American Navy, the American warships. I think according to the Iranians, those warships were going through the Iranian side of the Strait of Hormuz. So the Iranians fired at warships, and then we saw strikes by the Americans on Iran. That was the afternoon. I thought that was the end of it. That's why I thought, I can go do my sports for the day after doing a few interviews. And
naive, Mario.
Obviously, an hour ago, we just got new reports of strikes. And that is a lot of strikes, Brandon. It just seems, I know you've had a stance for a while that this has all been part of a clearing operation. So they're essentially clearing the way for a bigger operation.
They slammed Kashem, and they slammed Kashem very hard. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I know your audience gets annoyed. Your audience gets annoyed when I cut you off. I don't mean to.
Kashem Island. That's this one right here. Very important for controlling the Strait of Hormuz. Though Iran would still control the Strait of Hormuz even without it.
I drink a lot of caffeine. I live in Florida. I drink a lot of Cuban coffee, and by this point of the day, I am, ready to jump out of my skin. So,
I was just plugging your Substack. So if you're gonna interrupt that, that's fine. I won't do it anymore.
Plug away.
So there is no article you wrote on your Substack about Khark Island being invaded yesterday. But you've been talking about the way for a while about this being clearing operation, and I've been I still don't think it is, but it's becoming more likely than it was before in my mind that there's ongoing strikes of the same targets time and time again. Now I don't think it's a clearing operation for a ground operation for an invasion, but more likely I'd say it's continuing to degrade Iran's ability to close the Strait of Hormuz. And the last point I'd make on that front, if they manage to succeed in degrading Iran's ability to close the straits, which I don't think is possible militarily, but if they do, hypothetically, then Iran loses the biggest leverage and deterrent against.
Well, yes, if Iran is defeated militarily, which is he's saying, yes, then Iran would be defeated. But Iran has so many ways to control. You need to take out this entire region of the coastline. They've already mined the straits. Any missiles from anywhere in this coastline can hit a ship and take it out, so they could close it. There's no way to stop them from controlling Straits of Hormuz. And so much of their weaponry, their boats, their submarines are underneath ground, deep enough to not be hit by bombs. There's no way to stop them.
Strikes, and that opens the way for war.
Yes, it is perverse in that way, isn't it? Because if you would think if we could degrade it successfully to the point that that's no longer a factor, Iranian control over the Strait of Hormuz, that they would be then forced to be.
If you wanted to take out Iran no matter what, there is one way to break Iran's control over Strait of Hormuz. There is one way. You start bombing all of Iran's oil infrastructure. Everything, just level it completely. Iran responds, levels all the oil infrastructure in the US-aligned Gulf side. And there's no oil being produced in this part of the world at all anymore. At that point, the Strait of Hormuz don't matter anymore. It doesn't matter who controls the strait. The reason why everyone's fighting over this is because there's all this oil that's untapped here that wants to get out into the world. But if all this is destroyed in terms of oil infrastructure, Iran's leverage, its control over Strait of Hormuz, means jack shit. And then the playing field would be tilted in U.S. side. Iran would be under huge pressure economically and still under sanctions. Yeah, U.S. might win the Iran war that way. The one problem with this is we're looking at a global recession twice as bad as the Great Depression if this scenario happens, which I don't think Trump would survive politically.
More compliant. I don't think that would make the Iranians more compliant. That would make the regime more spastic, saying, "Oh God, now they're really going to come for us." And who knows what that means? Because I am one of the few people who still thinks the Iranians probably do have some kind of nuclear capability. Yeah,
I suspect they do at this point. They're not demonstrating it because that'd be escalation. Trump would go ballistic because it'd be the biggest humiliation possible for the man. So I think they're keeping it hidden, but I do think they have a nuke now.
They're not using it because, again, I don't think they're irrational. I think they know that's basically the end for everything if they do use it. But if they feel, holy cow, it's all falling apart now, we don't know how they'll react. I don't know.
They believe there's a genuine risk of Israel starting to use nukes against Iran. I think they'll do a nuclear test to show that they have nukes.
So if we can fully degrade their capability to control the strait. I talked about this with Karen in the last hour because I was reading on, I think it was CNN or Al Jazeera, in the last hour they were doing live updates in which it looked like we really slammed Qasem Island. Qasem Island has a massive, I think it's the largest underground IRGC facility. It's a drone facility and a ballistic missile facility. It's very deep underground, and Qasem Island has very complex geology as well. So I don't know how effective, and Karen was not sanguine that this was going to be effective, these strikes, because of how complex the geography is there. So we're definitely, though, trying, if not to pave a way, you're right, we are definitely trying to degrade their ability. I just don't think we can do it, given how they've decentralized and gone underground.
I've got more reports that are just getting more and more concerning. So the first one, 3 reports. So now confirmation of an attack on Ahvaz airport. Mm-hmm. That's number 1. Yeah. First time since the ceasefire. Number 2 is HIMARS and ATACMS have just been used again from Kuwait towards Iran. Something's already happened 2 days ago, but it's ongoing. And the third one, completely unconfirmed, because it's a pretty big claim, or they've removed it, I think. Whew. All right, I'm not going to mention what it... Okay, no, they haven't removed it. Okay. So unconfirmed report from one of the Olsen accounts indicate, and this is one that's usually pretty conservative. I'll read out exactly what they just posted 2 minutes ago.
What's the account?
A Geopolitics Watch.
Okay.
I'll send it to you if you like.
Yeah, no.
Unconfirmed report. Unconfirmed reports indicate the potential involvement of Pakistani military assets in the recent attack on Iran. Now, just to be clear, disclaimer, I think this is highly unlikely. Pakistan does a lot of business with Iran, etc. And Saudi has not even been attacked, so it's not even need justification. But again, this is an account that's very, very conservative in what they post. So that's why I'm really surprised by seeing this. If that was anyone else posting it, I wouldn't read it. So even they're saying it's unconfirmed. Let me keep reading because I haven't read it all yet.
I don't think so either.
I don't think so either. Although Pakistan does not maintain a sovereign base in the Middle East, approximately 16,000 Pakistani soldiers and hundreds of fighter jets are currently stationed at King Abdulaziz Airport in Saudi, pursuant to a defense pact between the two nations. Okay, this has just came in now. But just the fact that this is even being mentioned, that we're at that stage. Now, I want to be clear, Saudi was not attacked. Saudi and the UAE are the two countries in the Gulf that have not been attacked.
And I don't think Saudi's going to get attacked. I don't think the Iranians want to attack Saudi Arabia. Yeah.
And Kondab just got struck, according to some reports, there's explosions there, and that's deeper into Iran. That's in northwestern Iran, if I'm not mistaken. So putting all these together, it's... Actually, Stefan, whenever we mention a city, Stefan, you can open it and show it on Google Maps. It would be good for the audience to kind of keep track. But, man, what the fuck? This is...
Yeah, no, this is... Look, to me, this is why I'm not sure if, I do think we're depleting ourselves, but I think Trump's going to push this all the way to zero, and we're not yet there. And I think he's going to try to go for one big crescendo. I think clearly this is about a couple of things. I think the first thing is he's trying to wrest control of the Strait of Hormuz. Fundamentally, That's what this is. But I think connected to this, he's trying to put so much pressure on the Iranian economy and the Iranian system that it breaks, and that will allow for...
Yeah, but what can he accomplish now in like a week or two that he couldn't accomplish in a month and a half at the start of the war?
Or basically the potential of a regime change, not necessarily with U.S. forces, but certainly with sort of Iraqi Kurds and the MEK and whoever else we're trying to buddy up with within Iran.
Oh, we're 100% transitioning to the same situation as Syria, which is constant pressure on Iran to break the country apart, basically. This war was the initial phase, but we're going to do what we did in Syria, which is arm every insurgent we can inside of Iran. Suddenly there's going to be ISIS in Iran, genociding Christians there like they did in Syria. No, that's the point we are. But this war is going to end in Iran's victory. But after that, Iran's going to be under constant pressure and attack, just like Russia is.
It's a very large country. They have a multi-ethnic country, so there's a lot of different divisions there, and we're trying to play those up like we always do. But I do think that he is going to risk bringing our arsenals to zero or near zero in order to try to create the conditions that will allow for him to declare victory. And what is victory? It's the recapture of Strait of Hormuz, or the restoration of what it was like before the war, plus the inevitable degradation, if not destruction, of the regime. And I think either of those two options are not seriously on.
What's victory for Trump is something he can sell as victory. He needs Strait of Hormuz open, and he needs to do something about Iran's nuclear material. If he accomplishes those two things, and then he'll say, with all the damage we did, and met all our objectives, he can sell that as a victory. Problem is, he's not going to get either of those. By the time negotiations move around to the nuclear issue, there'll be an oil shortage, and all the leverage will be in Iran's hand, and he's not going to get what he wants on the nuclear issue either. And on the Strait of Hormuz, Iran's not going to give that up, and there's nothing Trump can do about it militarily.
On the table, no matter how much conventional firepower we put on the table. Something else that scares me is Karen brought this up, because she doesn't necessarily agree with my Karg Island thesis, because she thinks, like I do, it will be an absolute disaster. It'll be the worst strategic defeat of U.S. ground forces.
Agreed. You're going to have hundreds of videos of FPV drones diving into U.S. Marines. Scared, shocked glass faces of the Marines about to die being broadcast all over the internet. PR nightmare for Trump.
In decades, maybe ever, in the modern era. But then she did bring up why he might still do this, Trump, because this then opens the door to the ultimate escalation, an escalation that she doesn't think the Iranians could win, which is a nuclear escalation, either with our nukes or more likely with Israeli nukes. They just need the pretext to do it. And losing an American army in Karg might be the pretext. And I think that's still not the probability here, but I think it's now.
That might be the plans of some individuals, but a lot of the plans of bad actors like deep states regarding Ukraine and Iran haven't panned out. So no reason to think this one will either. Also, I do believe that Iran already is nuclear capable, already has nuclear weapons now. I think they raced to them as soon as the war started. And if Israel does nuke Iran, I think they're getting nuked, either from Iran or Pakistan. So, those Zionists, they do nuke Iran, they might not be around very long.
A possibility, whereas before it wasn't, because there's some odd stuff going on with Trump. I don't know why he's escalating. He has to know we can blow up all the targets we can find, and it ain't going to have the kind of impact he thinks it will conventionally. You start going up, though, with nukes, that gets different. And we know that he's brought up the use of nukes in a serious way behind the scenes. He has. And his advisors talked him back from the cliff. But who's to say, he's not going to keep bringing it up and wearing people down?
He's going to keep bringing it up because the alternative is defeat for him politically and irrelevancy of his presidency. He will be a lame duck president if he loses Iran war, which he will. And so he might get desperate and try to use nukes as the ultimate Uno reverse card to beat Iran. And we might have widespread nuclear war because of that. It'd be fun.
All right, so a few things happened while you're speaking. Number one is a petrochemical site has reportedly been attacked.
Because once a nuke gets used anywhere in war, whether it's Iran or Ukraine, it becomes far more likely to be used somewhere else. So if Israel used nukes against Ukraine, then Kyiv might get a nuke. Eastern Europe might get a nuke.
In Mashar. So that's energy infrastructure.
Yeah,
that's down south.
Which was a red line. Remember, the Iranians have said from the beginning, if you really hit our energy infrastructure, that's a red line for us. So...
also, we have... can you show the other one, the airport? That's been confirmed that the airport was struck. So that's the airport here that was struck. That's just been confirmed by the governor of that province. We also have a report that Ade was struck. No way. Omeda. What's Omeda? Omeda, I don't know what that is.
Omeda, I used to know. It's actually in my
unless yeah, I know what that is.
Omeda was, there's a military facility. I can't remember if there's a nuclear facility. There's some facility there. Because I remember 5 years ago when I wrote the book, it came up in my research. I can't remember, though, what it is.
Omedia, yeah. In Khuzestan province.
Khuzestan, yeah. Oh, you know what? It came up when I did the history of the Iran-Iraq War, because if I'm not mistaken, that is where some of the fighting occurred between Saddam and the Iranians. There's energy.
Yeah, and then another.
It's energy infrastructure then. If I'm not.
Yeah. So that one. Yeah. That one. Let me go. Can you scroll up? Let me see where it's located in. Okay. Yeah, it's down south of Kazakhstan. And then also reports. Okay, there's a lot in Behbahan as well. If you could show that as well, see where it is. Because for the audience, when we're showing you on the map where it is, it's important to see where these strikes are, because the deeper they are in Iran, that is an escalation. The more they are on the coastline, it shows that this is more to do.
Well, and the deeper they are, by the way, the deeper they are in Iran, it could mean that the strikes are actually not coming from us. There is an Israeli force operating in Azerbaijan, and they have in the past used Azerbaijan to attack Iran, especially during the 12-day war. So the deeper in Iran and the more inland and the closer it gets to the eastern side, you have to always think, well, maybe these attacks, they're in coordination with us, but maybe they're not exactly American attacks. We don't know. And right now, I wouldn't say that is what's at play, but the deeper it goes and the closer to the east it gets, that's always a possibility at that point.
For example, the strike that happened on the railway in northeastern Iran probably came from Azerbaijan.
Yeah. All right. So I'll tell you what I think about the Kharg Island theory. Where because I know I've told you my stance on why I don't think it's possible. Now, let me look at the probability of that being the case. You could remove the map. Thank you, Stephanie. So it kind of links to what you were saying earlier. Why else would Trump be escalating now? Because if it is about the Strait of Hormuz and the Iranians made it clear they don't want to give that up, military escalation won't achieve that objective. It will be more through diplomatic concessions. Unless he wants to hit him a few times with a stick and then concede diplomatically, very possible. But remember my theory from the beginning of the war. I've always said that this war is not about Israel. Israel plays a role, but the main reason for this war is being able to capture the Strait of Hormuz, gain leverage over China, the energy leverage, especially with the AI wars that are ongoing. So, and China has the rare earth leverage. If that's the case, then, and a lot of my economics guests tell me this because they believe in the same theory. If that's the case, then it's worth so much for the US that they're not going to give it up that easily. And they're ready to deplete more munitions, a prolonged conflict over 2-3 years, even multiple administrations to achieve that objective, because it's strategically so important for the Americans. It's a scary a theory if it's true, if that is the goal. It's a pretty scary scenario. But that kind of fits into what you're saying is that it's part of a bigger plan, and that is very possible still.
Yeah, it is part. But when I should say it's part of a bigger sort of tactical undertaking. I'm very skeptical that there's any grand plan from the administration to fight. I mean, it's cockamamie.
There's no grand plan on the part of Trump. That much is sure. He thought this war would be over in 3 days. He thought this was another Venezuela moment where he gets to be this guy that just takes out Iran for the first time in decades. He did what no one else could in 3 days, like he's some miracle man. Yeah, that was what Trump thought. On Trump's part, there's no grand plan. On the part of the military establishment in Washington, D.C., it's very possible that some see it this way.
Maybe enough, it might be a Trump plan, but it's not. It won't work. Going after Strait of Hormuz, just like going after Venezuela, the energy there, that's not going to collapse China's economy. It's not going to. It'll.
Russia's China are building pipelines through Siberia. They've just signed a deal, and then oil will flow directly from Russia to China, and there's nothing the West can do about it. And China's energy security will be unimpeachable.
It'll give them a headache, but they seem to be surviving very well right now on their own. Furthermore, people never seem to accept that China is a world leader in alternative energy sources that are only getting more advanced and more expansive. And so they have the ability to offset a lot of their energy vulnerabilities. This is part of their Malacca dilemma, right? Since 2012. And from what I understand, we and the Indians are doing some interesting things in the Strait of Malacca right now. But basically, the Chinese have not just looked at militarily overcoming their Malacca dilemma, but using industry and technology to overcome it. So this is why it may very well be that Trump was convinced that, I can hit China indirectly. I can fundamentally change the metrics of the game in my favor. But I think really what Trump is doing here initially, the real reason is because he was told this would be easy. It's the old meme that, it
would be over in 3 days.
Do this not because it's hard, but we thought it would be easy. And I think that's really what's at play here. And I think when we talk about Karg, it is part of, in Trump's mind, a larger, tactical plan to try to get leverage again over the Strait of Hormuz. Because the Marines, he has been told, I know this, that one of the missions of a Marine Expeditionary Unit, the primary mission is it lands, and you deploy it, and it takes control of an asset, and it conducts sea control from the land, from captured enemy territory. And so he's thinking, I think, this is what this is for. I'll land 2,500 of those guys. And it won't be 2,500. That's the total amount of people in an MEU. It'll be less than that, though, because not all those people deploy. And then I'll do an airborne insertion as well for good measure, and that'll be enough. And then once I take that, I can conduct sea control and deny the Iranians their ability to leverage their access to the Strait of Hormuz. I don't think any of this is going to work, though. And I think it's going to get all of our troops either captured or killed. It's going to be a disaster. And I think at that point, though, Karen, her theory about maybe that then does kick open the door unintentionally to nuclear escalation. Because at that point, if you lose an American army in the field, Trump's going to be spastic to do something to reset the narrative.
It would be so politically devastating to lose an army like that. He'd want a nuke.
Because at that point, he's a failed president, big time.
He's already a failed president. It's just the Americans haven't figured it out yet. We lost the Iran war, and 70% of Americans still think we won. And Trump is doing everything he can to preserve the fiction that America won.
I want to show you this in Ahvaz. This is where the important strike that happened on that airport for the first time since the ceasefire. Not much visuals, it'll be audio. So go ahead, play with the audio, please, Stephanie.
Ooh, you obviously.
So this is, and there's footage of attackers being used. This unconfirmed footage from Kuwait. You can play that without explosions. Bahdanan and Dezful in Kazakhstan province down south. Large-scale U.S. aerial campaign across southern Iran ongoing still, including missile launches from Kuwaiti territory. It's been confirmed. Obviously, we've been covering this for a while. But this is a very, very large-scale bombing campaign, not a short, small attack. Renewed explosions in Keshem. Brandon, I've been covering the war, obviously, very extensively for 10, 12 hours.
Yeah, so this is the biggest air campaign since the ceasefire. It's bigger than any of the air campaigns earlier this week.
Today, and I'll be looking at those news and updates non-stop every waking minute. These are the attackers over Kuwaiti territory. You could remove it. Thank you, Stephanie. This is exactly how it looks like. Like this, there's not much different. alerts across the Gulf. The only exception is twofold. UAE and Saudi, number one. And number two, the target list hasn't escalated to... Actually, the target list is the same. Probably the volume of ordnance that are being dropped. Ordnance that are being dropped on Iran and vice versa. So the volume of the attacks. And the third big difference is Israel. Do you think Israel will be joining this? That's the big question now.
Well, my understanding is they're out of interceptors, basically. And I think I actually was going to bring this up at the beginning, and I meant to bring this up with Karen. It's very interesting. They've sort of gotten quiet in the last couple of weeks, haven't they? We know they weren't happy with the memorandum of misunderstanding.
Israel wants the U.S. to fight its wars for it.
But ultimately, what's going on right now? The IDF is quietly reconfiguring that beachhead they have in the southern Lebanon, and they're making it smaller, and they're making it more easily defendable, and they're handing over a lot of territory they took to the Lebanese army. They are not winning this thing. And they're going into a defensive crouch and basically trying to create a fortification in that southern beachhead because they can't go on any further. They have depleted their offensive capacity in southern Lebanon. And in terms of their air defense, their missile defense, they are very near zero. And they're panicking in Tel Aviv, from what I understand, because if the Iranians really decide to open up on them, and they haven't, which is interesting, but if they really decide, they can deplete whatever's remaining, and then Israel's basically lying supine for the Iranians to do with as they please, because the American interceptors are also, if you've noticed, the American interceptors have sort of reduced their operational tempo because they're running out. And so we're in a position now where certainly the defensive capabilities of Israel and the U.S. in the region are very limited at a time when we're escalating offensively. I don't know why Israel has not been hit yet. If I were Israel, I'd be...
No, it's not about why they haven't been hit because they haven't joined the war. Why would Iran want to drag Israel into it? How does it benefit?
If Iran...
The reason this whole war started was Israel.
Iran really wants to end their Israeli obsession. They could do it beginning around now because the Israelis are very depleted. The Israelis are trying to harden what they have rather than expand for a very key reason. So I'm not saying I want that to happen. I'm just saying, it's a very interesting question. I don't have a good answer for why haven't the Iranians just gone ham on Israel, given what's going on now. And I don't know, but it's something to watch out for. And I would definitely keep an eye on that area, because if Iran does decide to do this, that'll break whatever defenses are still available to the Israelis. And then Israel's really up the creek.
At the very end of the active month and a half of the war, there were reports of 80% of Iran's ballistic missiles getting through Israel's air defense. So there hasn't been that much time for Israel to rebuild its supplies of interceptors. Also, Hezbollah has, I think, damaged a lot of the Iron Dome towards the north of Israel with drones.
But let's not overestimate as well. Like I've always said, let's not underestimate Iran's capabilities, but let's not overestimate it either. They're a country that's just been bombarded to oblivion. No. They still have significant capabilities, but they're already fighting with the world's biggest military as we speak. Why drag another military into it? There's no
U.S. is really fighting granite mountains, and that's what it's fighting in Iran, because all of Iran's military assets are deep, deep, deep underground. Here, let me show you. This is Iran. I think this is a great picture. You can see it's just, it's mountains. The entire region is mountains. And all of Iran's military is underneath these granite mountains. And even nukes can't get through granite mountains. There's nothing that can get through granite mountains. So we can bomb military assets that come out of the mountains and are on the surface, but the ones that are buried, there ain't nothing we can do about them.
Strategic benefits of dragging Israel.
Right now, my point is, though, Israel is very weak. And so I don't know why they're not. Maybe they can't. You might be right. Maybe this is a bridge too far for Iran, because Iran is not impervious. But this is something that I think you should be keeping an eye on, definitely, and I'm certainly going to keep an eye on, because it is a big question I have. Why?
We know that Iran still has most of their most advanced missiles. They have them remaining. They only use like 3 or 4 like Farah 2s in the hot phase of the war. And we suspect they have about 50 of them. And those are buried under mountains. So they have the ability to hit Israel.
Why not? If Israel is as weak as I think they are right now, and militarily they are right now, what is holding them back in Iran? It could be that they're too focused right now. They're trying to keep the Americans at bay. but it's something to keep an eye out for, and definitely keep an eye out on the Azerbaijan situation, because the Israelis are there and they have capabilities in place there, and they've used it before. And Azerbaijan is poorly understood among analysts analyzing this war, that sort of opening up against Iran.
But Azerbaijan also doesn't want war with Iran. I think
it doesn't really matter.
Position.
It doesn't really matter because Azerbaijan is not even really in control of its own destiny at this point. So I mean, the Zangezur corridor, they want that completely locked into the growing U.S., Turkish, Israeli system and of pipelines and trading routes, and that's an alternative to the Belt and Road Initiative up there and the Russian routes as well. So they've got a very long-term financial stake in not letting the Iranians survive this war.
Interesting.
The regime in Iran.
Yeah, the current Iranian government.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, man, we've covered most things. The bombardment's ongoing. Larry's going to be jumping on in 20 minutes to continue the conversation. But meanwhile,
hey, you should ask him about Lindsey Graham. I know your team.
I wanted to ask you. I wanted to ask you about it, and I forgot. I knew there was something, and I'm like trying to remember. What did I want to ask? Brandon?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I talked to Karen about it. As well. At first I thought, well, he's 71 and he's not in the best of health.
He looked very active and alive right before dying. And we're going to watch an Asmongold video on that afterwards, but I'm open to anything. I think it's very suspicious that he was so active and so energetic, and he was visiting Ukraine. Both the hotel and the drone factory he visited got destroyed, and there are conspiracy theories, rumors that he was at the drone factory when it was bombed, and so they just flew his body back, and he was actually dead for a few days. Or there's conspiracy theories that he was poisoned, or it could be something else. I have no idea, but Graham had a lot of enemies.
I believe that too.
But at the same time, I pay attention to what the Russian Telegram channels are saying, and I certainly have back channels with the Russians.
I will add that it's very possible that it is the deep state that took him out. And the evidence supporting this is the way the media is reporting it. If there's any hint of Russian involvement, if Russia had bombed the drone factory while he was there, United States, the media would have leveraged that to accuse Russia of assassinating a U.S. senator, and they would have been used against Russia. So is my thinking. So I suspect it might very well be some element within the United States that took Graham out.
And I pay attention to what Dugin says, and there's I got a weird vibe from a lot of these Russians that probably would know something, and it's almost like maybe he was taken out. And I'm not saying that's the case, but
by who? By Russia?
By the Russian intelligence services. And look, there would be a reason for it, right? I mean, he's the leading.
That's possible too.
He's overwhelmingly pro-Ukraine. He has a direct link to the ear of the president. The president listens to him far too much. We know that the drone factory that Mr. Graham visited was attacked shortly after he was there. And Karen mentioned that she heard his hotel was attacked while he was staying there. And I saw that your team posted about 3 hours ago on your X account, this Russian former, I think KGB or Russian former whatever, who broke down exactly the kind of pathogen the Russian intelligence services might have spiked Lindsey Graham's drink with on the presidential train that he was riding on to go to that factory. And it induces cardiac arrest, I think, after 48 hours of exposure to it. So, it's just very odd. It's the whole thing's very odd. And Larry, I heard, I don't know if it was to you or elsewhere in the last 24 hours, Larry was saying that the timeline doesn't match. And look,
there is one huge benefit to Russia to the way Graham died, is that he died right after a trip to Ukraine. That's going to make a lot of congressmen less excited to visit Ukraine.
We know that
timeline, as in he thinks that he's implying that Russia was behind it.
I don't know if he's implying that Russia, but the timeline doesn't match. I am saying I have seen a lot of Russian Telegram channels kind of running with this. The Russians have not obviously officially said that is what happened, and we have photos now of Graham being taken out of his home. He's basically dead in these pictures, but he's being taken out on a gurney. I don't know, but the point is, I think Larry's right when he says the timeline doesn't match, and a lot of these Russians that I follow, who I think are connected. And Dugin was deflecting on Twitter today or on X and saying that what did he say? He said it was Mossad, which doesn't look. It's far be it for me to protect Mossad, but Mossad does keep killing Graham. That's their golden goose in the Congress. They kill him, they've got a big problem. They've got a big hole they have to fill.
The number one Israel supporter in Congress. This is the one case where I don't suspect Mossad.
So this is very odd. I don't know, but it's very odd. And also, I was told that Putin exploded was the word that was used. Putin exploded last week when Trump said when he met with Zelensky at the NATO conference that he endorsed and encouraged Zelensky to attack deeper into Russia. And that, I am told, exploded. Putin exploded over that video. And that is when Lavrov came out and started talking about, we're done. The spirit of of Anchorage is dead. And we're just going.
That's good to hear. Putin finally waking up a little bit out of his stupor.
Going to take care of this militarily now. And so, I'm not saying the Russians did it because there's also, it's really irresponsible for them to have done it. And they've actually, I think, behaved more responsibly in terms of great power politics. But you can't discount this possibility because of Trump's actions. And this very easily could have been a message to Trump. Hey, you better back off, buddy. Again, I'm not saying for sure that's what happened, but we have to entertain the possibility because the official story has thus far never, ever been satisfactory. It has never satisfied the actual qualifications to accept it. In any of these events. And I see Keystone Cash Patel coming out saying that this is what happened. And I start to think, oh boy, then it must not be true because this guy's an idiot.
He's already given an explanation.
He said that it was natural causes. The FBI is actively investigating it. Nothing to see here. Move along, move along.
Yeah, that is what makes me suspect it is a U.S. component because Russia doesn't have the ability to control U.S. media. And the way the U.S. media is spinning it is there's nothing to see here. Usually when there's nothing to see here, it's the people that control the media that have done something.
It's the typical Charlie Kirk thing, we'll see you in Valhalla.
Exactly.
So I don't trust it. There's something you should definitely ask Larry, though, when you talk.
I want to get Dugan on.
Do you know him?
Yeah, I've interviewed him a couple of times.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Actually, let's jump right into Larry Johnson covering all this.
So what happens now, Larry? Before we go into the news of the day, there's a lot today. We are seeing those heavy strikes. Obviously, Iran will retaliate. So probably the first question is they drag Qatar, and Oman. There was a strike on Oman as well, but it wasn't Omani infrastructure. It was one U.S. military target in Oman. Did you see that yesterday? You saw that as well?
Remember, I just mentioned that earlier. They hit the naval facility. They hit the naval facility there in Oman.
Yep.
Okay, I can ask you about that one then. What do you make of that? The fact that a naval facility in Iran was struck.
Oman naval facility here. If it was servicing U.S. aircraft carriers that are attacking Iran, it makes sense for Iran to hit it.
Well, I mean, they're going after any military capability the U.S. has that's been used to attack Iran. The United States is going in and Iran's going in and taking them out. This ain't complicated. This is not, some sort of advanced mathematics course. It's just, Iran's made clear what its position is. And it's up to the United States to, pay attention. If the United States keeps these attacks up, Iran's going to keep the attacks up.
How far do you think this will escalate before a side blinks?
Yeah.
The oil shortage. It's not how far will it escalate, is when will the oil shortage hit. That's when this starts to wind down. The pressure on Trump to basically capitulate to Iran will become insurmountable.
Oh, well, we'll know tomorrow morning. If there is some conciliatory message from Donald Trump, then there'll be, it'll be another temporary lull. This will not be the end of this. These will continue. But the point is, it doesn't get the Strait of Hormuz open. The United States needs the Strait of Hormuz.
If there is some type of military action by United States on the ground, it'd be a disaster. But if it happens, it'll be in the next 10 days. That's the window. After that, things get so tight in oil market that it doesn't become realistic for the United States to try anything.
It's open from a strategic standpoint, and that's not happening. And the longer it stays shut like this, the more damage to the U.S. economy.
So I just got a piece of news on the heavy water reactor that was struck in Kondab.
Just an update on that, what's going on with Strait of Hormuz. This is an updated graph from today. And notice it's just about as close as you can get to Strait. Like the little blip of oil that's gone in out, that's over. It's Strait of Hormuz are closed again.
Outside Kondab is the Arak heavy water reactor. Now, but this reactor, as I said earlier, has been struck, as I said earlier, 2025, 2026. And someone's saying it's not functional right now. So for it to be struck is a symbolic strike. But if it is a symbolic strike, that will be more of a message being sent. Could the US escalate this to start striking energy infrastructure? Do you think that's the possibility that they're considering right now?
Well, I think, yes. Yeah, I think they may very well consider it. And At that point, if they start striking Iranian energy infrastructure, those states in the Gulf that are allowing themselves to be used for these strikes, they will have their energy infrastructure struck. And now it is summer, and that is trouble.
As I said, I'll come stay at your place.
We're talking about energy infrastructure. We're talking about power plants in this context, not oil. And that's why it's trouble for the Gulf, is that you need AC during the summer in that area, or it's unlivable.
As soon as that happens, Larry.
Yeah.
The New York Times just reported just now, a U.S. official told the New York Times that today, the strikes today that are ongoing now, will be bigger than all other attacks so far against Iran since the ceasefire.
Yeah, every day's bigger.
Well, that much is obvious.
This is really big. Tomorrow's going to be really bigger. And then even bigger. Of course, they're operating with a limited supply of missiles, so at some point they're going to run out, and then they're going to have to scale back.
Well, they have enough for 1 week at least of very intense bombing. They don't have enough for another month and a half, but another week or two of heavy bombing, yep, the U.S. has that.
But the target list is a lot more vast this time. There's another report now, I'll confirm it.
Wait. Target list now is more vast than what?
Then all strikes
vast
since the ceasefire.
Oh, it's more, okay. Yeah, because this isn't even approaching what was done during the 40-day war.
Not at all, no.
They haven't even gone that far, so
exactly.
This is a show of force, but it has limited effect.
Well, just to kind of give you a disclaimer, my position, I don't think this is a return to a full-blown war. Because I was telling one of my other guests who was talking about this scenario, we're back into war. I was saying to them, like, look, these attacks are more than I expected. I didn't expect us to be here by now, but much less than what there was during the war. So that's my position as well. But they're a lot more.
The lack of strikes against Tehran itself tells me that this is not, the purpose of these strikes isn't regime change. The United States has given up on that. This is about the Strait of Hormuz. They're attacking. First was the coast, then there's a little deeper inland from the coast, but this is mainly, I think it's to set the stage to some failed U.S. operation, or just to pressure Iran to lose control over the Strait of Hormuz. Neither will work.
Escalating in quicker than at least I expected. There's, like, for example, now the Behahan refinery has been struck, and there's a power outage through that city. That's energy infrastructure being struck 2 days in a row. That's something I did not expect. And nuclear facility, symbolic or not, was struck as well in the last hour. Land-to-land missiles being fired in the last 2 days. Now, again, compared to the war, it's not far from it. So there's a lot of things missing now that they were there during the war. Number one, in the war, the ordnance being dropped were a lot more. Number two, Iran was retaliating on a bigger scale across the entire Gulf. And number three, Israel was involved during the war. Now Israel's not involved, at least based on what we have, the information we have so far. So very different to where we were during the war, but a lot worse than where we were just 4 days ago and in the last 3 months.
Well, in context, during the days of heaviest bombing during the war, yes, it was a lot bigger than this. But during the lulls, during the 40-day war, there were some periods of less intense bombing, and that would fit right in line with one of those days. What's going on now?
Trump said ceasefire is dead. Ceasefire is over, so they're going to continue until they come back and request a ceasefire with Iran. Now, whether Iran will be willing to concede this time, to acquiesce, I doubt it.
That's the worry that I have, because I don't think the intention of the Trump administration is for a full-blown war again. But the problem is a miscalculation. With them miscalculating what
Iran is on the verge of winning. I said before, hold the Strait of Hormuz closed 6 months, right here, Iran wins automatically. The world runs out of oil. They are on the verge of that. They just need to get over here. They're not going to, when you have victory that close, they're not going to give up control over the Strait of Hormuz.
Iran wants. Now, obviously, I don't have access to classified information to know what Iran's position or capabilities are. But what if that's miscalculated? The whole war has been a miscalculation. What if there's another miscalculation now? And they assume Iran would stop retaliating once the Americans stop attacking them. So let's say the Americans decide, look, today's the last day of the war. Let's degrade them as much as possible, and then we go back to diplomacy tomorrow. But the problem that I'm worried about is what if Iran's like, you know what, screw this. And those that are already against the MOU gain more traction, and they start calling the shots. And suddenly we have an Iran that keeps bombing American targets or the Gulf for the next month. Proactively bombing the Gulf, not reactively to American bombing. That's the scenario that worries me.
Yeah, well, I think it's a very likely scenario. The United States, the problem the United States has, it's got limited armaments. It doesn't have an unlimited. If they had an unlimited supply of Tomahawks and JASSMs, yeah, they could sustain this indefinitely, but they don't have that. And now they've got the issue of the shortage of diesel and aviation fuel that is going to start hitting markets. Because
there's a solution. Oh, sorry, you cut that out.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
What's the solution?
Yeah, there's a solution for the Tomahawk missile depletion. You didn't hear?
No, I'm sorry.
I haven't heard it.
That's right. Zelensky's going to start producing them. So by next week, he'll be producing
yes.
them for Iran, for the war.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that's right. Yeah, I'm sure he's cut a deal. He's cut a deal with China to get his hands on those 18 different rare earth minerals that are used in the production of the Tomahawk. Yeah, I'm sure that'll happen. Now, don't hold your breath though. You'll turn blue and pass out.
I heard the production targets will be 500 a week by next week.
And unicorns will be flying out of his ass too. So.
But there we go. Oh, that's Israel just struck Gaza Strip. But yeah, of course, you were just saying the other point on the fuel shortages as well.
It's not even worth mentioning that Israel hits Gaza Strip at this point, because I sort of assume it's happening every day.
In the US, which is why it's just what's happening right now is a bizarre thing. It's just such a, and I've said this to you yesterday, it's just such a gamble by the US administration that it's just a bizarre gamble.
Well, it's not.
Trump's alternative to that is basically recognizing Iran's control of the Strait of Hormuz and basically acknowledging to the world that Iran won the war, which would have horrible effects for him politically at home. People like Asmongold would go, hey, wait, what's this? I thought we won the Iran war. Yeah, it's going to be very entertaining at some point in the next 2 months where Asmongold finally realizes that, no, we lost the Iran war. I'm waiting for that. I'm looking forward to that.
It's certainly not rational. That's for sure. And you can make the case that it's actually irrational.
So while I get more updates on the strikes now, and I'll mention the updates as they come in on the strikes on the Iran that are ongoing. What do you make of an interesting development? What I woke up to this morning is that the Iranians initiated the attack today by striking the HIMARS missile system based in Kuwait that the Americans used to strike Iran.
Why do you say they initiated it?
They attacked the launchers that were used to attack them. That's just defending yourself. It's a retaliation for the U.S. strikes.
Were reacting to what happened yesterday.
Yeah,
exactly.
No, it was a reaction, obviously, to the attack from yesterday. But
so they didn't quote initiate it. They're just following up on what was done to them. It's not like there was a set time that said, okay, you can only attack between these hours, and then anything done after that's a new attack.
Yeah, 100%. What I meant by it is that this is the first time since the ceasefire that, because the back and forth since the ceasefire has been the Iranians attack a ship, the Americans attack Iran, and Iran retaliates against the Gulf. That would be the end of it. And we've seen that happen again and again. You compare it to Groundhog Day. Now, the interesting one today when they struck the missile system in Kuwait, maybe I'm looking too much into it. I know it's a reaction to that missile system, that exact missile system being used against Iran, which shows Iran's capabilities in terms of targeting and intelligence that they have. The targeting, I'm assuming using the Chinese radar. But this is I'm not sure if this is a fundamental change in the rules of engagement, where the Iranians might strike what they see as threats or might retaliate maybe 2-3 days later, different to what we've seen in the last 3 months. What I'm noticing in the last 72 hours is a lot of differences on both sides. Iran striking more Gulf countries, the attack on the HIMARS system in Kuwait now today.
Well, the MOU is dead, so we're sinking back into all-out war.
And the Americans striking, first time a few days ago, they retaliated for 2 or 3 days after Iran attacked the ships. So all these different things is a big deviation from the back and forth that we've been seeing for months. Which for me worries me that this is how things get out of control.
So why is Iran striking the Gulf states? Just because it doesn't like the Gulf states, or because the Gulf states are allowing their territory to be used to strike Iran? It's real simple, not complicated. As long as the United States continues to use those states as a proxy, and they allow themselves to be manipulated in that way, they're going to continue to get hit.
So I've got a statement. I didn't read it, but I saved it for our discussion. The IRGC responds to the attack against the Duqm port in Oman that you were just mentioning earlier. Quote, in the third phase of our response to the aggression of the child-killing American army, the IRGC airspace force destroyed the logistical support center.
It's sad that we gave Iran the ability to actually call us child killers, and it's true because of that strike the first day, that schoolgirls. That strike was a disaster.
US Navy ships and the refueling platforms of aircraft carriers in the port of Duqm, Oman, with a heavy surprise attack. Victories only from Allah. Okay, there's nothing big to the statement. Just talking about the target there. We've got an Iranian statement, 2 statements from Iran today. One from Ghalibaf. Quote, the era of one-sided deals is over. We told you, keep your word or pay the price. Reality is knocking. This is Ghalibaf. And then the advisor to the Supreme Leader, Rezai, who he's a pretty senior person that we quote a lot. He said that revenge for the killing of the Supreme Leader is a serious and actionable matter. Okay, I didn't see that one. And that if leader targeting becomes a pattern, no country will have security. Yeah,
U.S. was killing children long before that. True, but you have to admit that the strike on that Iranian school was one of the most blazing and, killing 150 school children in one go. That's not something the United States does every day.
He said Trump and Netanyahu have crossed Iran's red lines. Quote, "This act must be met with decisive and proportionate punishment. The path of revenge will be followed."
Yep. Sounds like what they're doing. Yeah, I mean, they're not this time, and in contrast to what we saw some of the previous days, they're not waiting to see what has been hit. Iran's responding pretty quickly these days.
Yeah.
Well, what's going on in Gaza, that's not the United States, at least not directly. So, what Israel's doing, that's a completely different conversation. And but we were that, as far as I know, understand that strike on the school in Iran was U.S. Tomahawk. It was U.S. that did it, not Israel.
Yeah, I just got a report now of power outages in Behbahan. If you could show that where it is on the map, please, Stephanie, for the audience, that'd be good. So we're getting initial reports of power outages there. I hope they're not striking energy infrastructure. And that's down there, just to be clear, that's down south, I think in the Kazakhstan province as well, where it's been struck a lot. And now obviously
U.S. citizens provides U.S. weapons, funding, support, and defense to Israel. Yes, and it's definitely we're definitely indirectly responsible for most of what Israel is doing. I'm not going to try to defend that. I'm just, into context of what the U.S. does directly, there is a difference between directly and indirect. But, yeah. It's not actual Americans that are doing the killing in the Gaza.
Power outages.
Mostly, some dual citizens.
This happened during airstrikes, sometimes unintentionally. If certain locations were hit, it depends how vast the power outage is. So I don't have that information, but that was just struck there. So before I go through the news of the day, okay, that's it. So just going back to the news of the.
Well, yes, Israel wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the United States. If it's 90% responsible, it still isn't 100%. The school in Iran, that was 100% United States.
The day. There's a report here by Farish News. They said Qatar and Saudi assisted U.S. strikes on Iran despite publicly condemning Tehran's missile attacks. U.S. AWACS aircraft operating from Saudi and more than 20 U.S. refueling aircraft at Qatar's Al Udeid air base. So this is Farish News saying Qatar and Saudi. Now, Qatar was already struck heavily yesterday. We're part of the attacks by the U.S. So if that's true, then we shouldn't be too surprised if Saudi's added to the target list, I guess.
Yeah, I know there was a big bombing campaign against Yemen. Saudi Arabia did the big bombing campaign too. I wasn't following that as closely, but even then, I don't think they ever bombed a school and killed 150 school children. They did kill children, just not as many in one bombing.
Right. Yeah.
The Strait of Hormuz, your favorite news of the day?
Don't you know it's wide open for business right now? That's what Donald Trump said. Must be true. If you checked it out on vesselfinder.com or marinetraffic.com, that seems to show a completely different picture. In fact, the only two ships operating there are U.S. pleasure craft, a yacht and something defined as a U.S. pleasure craft. You want to make any bet that those are being used for intel collection? And Iran's message to Oman means
a huge amount of civilians are dying all over the Middle East, and have been for some time. What I consider the worst was the genocide of Christians in Syria by ISIS. That was worse than anything we've talked about so far. 1 million Christians vanished.
Those ships may be in danger.
And that was funded by CIA Mossad.
So you can see here the Omani side has been completely shut. And obviously this shows the ships with the AIS transponders on. But even AIS transponders off, I wouldn't expect many in the midst of the bombing on both sides. So that's in the last, let me see, this is in the last 24 hours. So since yesterday morning till today morning. So this is a few hours old, but I'm assuming it's even worse now considering this is getting worse. This is a summary from HFI Research. I think it's the summary from them. Well, it looks like the strait is closed again. IRGC fired at 2 ships. That was obviously yesterday. The US tried to get another group of tankers in, and 2 were hit. And there's been some ships that were planning to go through and did not eventually go through.
No traffic. We are back to Hormuz being closed.
Now, in terms of the joke you made earlier where Trump said it's completely open, what's what happened in the last 24 hours? CENTCOM says the Strait of Hormuz is open and that traffic is flowing and Iran does not control the straits. That was this morning. The Persian Gulf Strait Authority then put out a statement saying transiting through Hormuz is currently not possible When the strait eventually reopens, the only way to obtain valid permits is through the PGSA. Then CENTCOM replied, saying, claim the IRGC recently said on TV that no foreign vessels may pass through Hormuz without being identified, tracked, and monitored by Iranian forces. Fact, Iran does not control the Strait of Hormuz. It remains an international...
Yes, Trump is not willing to recognize Iran's control over the Strait of Hormuz. That's the whole reason for this week's round of bombings. But he's going to have to accept it eventually, kicking and screaming once the world runs out of oil.
A waterway, U.S. forces are positioned and prepared to keep it that way. And then UK MTO put a...
Yeah, where are they on that map? Show me a U.S. force. Non-existent.
Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz.
These kinds of lies is remarkable, because it's not, it's one thing if you don't actually have live feed covered. We got it from two different feeds, Vessel Finder and MarineTraffic.com. It's, what the U.S. is saying is not true, objectively. Not a matter of opinion. It's an objective fact.
Well, I've got that your friends at UK MTO advised that the southern route through the Strait of Hormuz remains available despite Iran's proclamation that the strait is closed.
Yeah,
the route has been expanded. The route has been expanded. So that was this morning.
Yeah, trust us, bro. It's open, man. And then say, hey, let's get one of those UK MTO personnel. Let them sell on one of those ships. I think you gave that option. Oh, well, no, I get seasick. Okay.
So this makes your point earlier that we got the Iranians saying it's closed, the Americans saying it's open. Obviously, the tracking, the satellite trackers, the two that you mentioned. And I'm sure that...
So this is where the United States wants ships to go through. And there were reports yesterday that the IRGC mined this to shut it down permanently. Yeah. Going forward, the only way to go through the Strait of Hormuz will be the Iranian route.
Barely any ships are going through. It's a significant drop. Is there just a handful of ships mainly going through the Iranian
side?
So
who's telling the truth, Iran or the United States?
Oh, in my view, the Strait of Hormuz is as close to being closed as possible, and barely any traffic is going through. Yeah, so the Iranians are the ones.
Iranians are telling the truth. The only ones that make it. Well, not in just this case, consistently throughout this, Iran's been telling the truth. The United States has been lying.
Do you think, on that point, I didn't put it as a note to discuss, but I'm glad you reminded me of it accidentally. Do you think the Iranian claim, there was a claim today that went viral that there's 3 soldiers in Kuwait?
Yeah, there was a claim that 3 Iranian soldiers
that got killed in that strike.
Got killed in the strike in Kuwait. Possible. United States hasn't admitted it yet.
CENTCOM just put out a statement 2 hours ago saying that claim Iran says blah, blah, blah. Fact, that's not the case. Just one of those typical tweets.
I don't know. I'm just saying, based on the U.S. track record, the U.S. track record is it's lying more often than it's telling the truth.
True.
Remember when that KC-135 quote crashed? It didn't crash. It was shot down. U.S. lied about that.
Still talking about a refueling tanker that was shot down over Iraq during the 40 days of the war.
During the first 40 days.
Is that the two that crashed?
No, the one that crashed, the one that got his tail peppered with shrapnel.
Yeah.
And they claimed that was, quote, an accident or something. It wasn't an accident. It was shot down.
I thought it hit birds. The shrapnel was birds.
Right. Yeah, that's...
Or bees. Or bees.
Birds and the bees.
Those
fairies.
Yeah, those Persian Gulf butterflies are badass, man.
Watch out for the butterflies.
That struck it by accident.
It was the flying unicorn. That's what the horn got in there, messed it up.
I got you. There you go. We got it. The Cypriot flagged container ship that was struck yesterday. There were reports that the mariners one of them was missing. So those reports, it seems all of them have been rescued and they've been escorted, and they're all safe. And there's been reports of that vessel sinking. I don't know if you saw that.
I heard that it's...
I was saying earlier this week that Iran was going to close the Strait of Hormuz and probably sink a vessel there, and they did it.
But again, no independent confirmation.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if that's UK MTO that confirmed that it sunk. The maritime security severe. Yeah, there's been reports, so it's not confirmed, but yeah, it's a UAE managed with Indian workers. That's what the GFC Galaxy ship is. I think it's got a Cypriot flag. So I don't know why isn't that the Cypriot one? Yeah, Cypriot flag, UAE managed. I don't know how these work, but anyway, there's been reports of that having sunk. It was a pretty significant attack. So anyway, that's on the Strait of Hormuz. I think we've covered that pretty well. Let me see while we're speaking if there's more updates on the explosions. We got more reports of power outages. Shit, it's not a good time. But the scale of the disruption has been significantly exaggerated. The power outages are limited to relatively small areas within a handful of districts. So it's not a massive power outage. it seems that an electrical substation was damaged, resulting in a limited power outage. Now, just to be clear, because I know a lot of people jump to conclusions that this is the energy infrastructure being struck. That's the general assumption a lot of people make. When there's power outages, they do happen during strikes, so it's not something I learned throughout.
Yeah, you have power lines that get damaged.
This war, it doesn't always immediately indicate that energy infrastructure is being targeted by the US. But we've had more indications than ever since the ceasefire that there's been limited strikes on energy infrastructure as well as a nuclear facility. I'm saying it's limited, so I'm not sure whether the message is being sent by the Americans to the Iranians that this could be the next as part of the escalation ladder, or whether it was accidental, or whether they're just not confirmed and they're untrue. But so that's just a quick update on the latest developments. All right, so let's go to. There was one other unconfirmed report. I give it likelihood very low, Larry, but I'm going to read it anyway. It came from one of the Olsen accounts. I'd say likelihood 5-10%, which is extremely low, probably 5%. But there's one Olsen account that was reporting that. Let me read out exactly what he says, because I don't want to paraphrase something I don't think is true. Unconfirmed reports indicate, and I know you won't agree with this one, but I'll read it anyway for the sake of sharing the information with the audience. Unconfirmed reports indicate the potential involvement of Pakistani military assets in the recent attack.
I don't believe it.
Although Pakistan does not maintain a sovereign base in the Middle East, approximately 16,000 Pakistani soldiers and hundreds of fighter jets are currently stationed at King Abdullah Air Base in Saudi, pursuant to a defense pact between the two nations. Now, the reasons I don't think this is true is, number one, obviously Pakistan has a very good relationship with Iran. Number two, there's no reason to. Even when Saudi was struck, they didn't get involved. And number three, there's no reports of Saudi being struck. So it's a very bizarre report, but I'm reading it because the source is usually a good one, but they say it's unconfirmed. So I thought I'd mention it. And I'm guessing you'd agree it's highly unlikely.
No, it's not just highly unlikely. It's impossible.
I agree.
Unless, Hassan Munir has put his very reputation on the line with Iran. And so Iran has been very willing to listen to the Pakistanis and try to work with them. So
Pakistan sent one of the most senior delegations to the funeral of the former supreme leader, together with Russia. There was two countries that sent the highest level delegations. So I don't believe that Pakistan attacked Iran.
So, but the notion that Pakistan's going to start attacking Iran, not going to happen.
So a piece of news on Turkey, as a quick one. U.S. ambassador to NATO said that the F-35 deals with Turkey will happen. And he believes, and there's other reports that it seems the transaction with the UAE for the S-400 seems to be progressing. So it's something we've discussed extensively already. But just a quick update on that front. The source here, it's the NATO himself, the NATO spokesperson. The NATO.
So Turkey is trying to offload its S-400 systems, that one of the best air defenses systems made by Russia, to the UAE. I don't know if Russia would be okay with strengthening United Arab air defenses in that way with this conflict with Iran happening. But even if the transfer does happen, it's probably not going to happen for a while. It's not going to affect any of the fighting in the next few weeks. And the reason for this is that the U.S. has this law that no country that has the S-400 system is allowed to have the F-35 fighter jets, because then the Russian technicians that help maintain the S-400 system could train their system to better detect the U.S. fighter jets. They don't want that.
U.S. ambassador to NATO. I want to talk about the Trump assassination story again, because there's a new report that came out. And then I want to ask you about Lindsey Graham, because I know that's something you commented on. Brandon was telling me. In terms of the Trump assassination I'll rephrase that. The Trump assassination plot that later got downgraded to a discussion rather than a plot. Do you think there's a possibility, I wouldn't say a probability, but a possibility that maybe the Iranians are actually considering the assassination of Trump, considering how many of their leaders, including their supreme leader, being killed?
Right.
I say no, just because of this. They're on the verge of bringing Trump to his knees. You do not kill your enemy when you're on the verge of bringing your enemy to his knees.
Well, always that possibility, but okay, so they kill him. Then what? Do you think that causes Iran to collapse? No, it just makes Iran, reinforces that, okay, there is no ground for negotiation here. They'll continue to shut the Strait of Hormuz, and the United States cannot endure another year with the Strait of Hormuz closed. Its economy cannot stand it.
The pain starts in next month and a half from the Strait of Hormuz. What do we have? As long as the global oil inventory reserves are being released into the market, it completely makes up for the Strait of Hormuz. But once those reserves go dry, that's when things get interesting.
Senator Graham's death. I don't know what you've said before, so I'd love to hear it.
Sure. Lindsey Graham arrived in Kyiv roughly around between 10:30 and 11 a.m. on Friday morning. He left Washington, D.C. on Thursday morning around 7 a.m. It was a 10-hour flight to get to Poland, at which point he boards a train either in Warsaw, or there's a station closer to the border. Depends on where he flew in, but the reality is it's about a 20 to 21 hour journey total to get into.
Just for context, this is just during his trip, the pictures of Graham at the drone factory that was subsequently bombed. Same day.
Kyiv. So he's in Kyiv, meets with Zelensky, then goes and visits that drone factory. And at some point, whether he's there or it happened after he gets there, the drone factory's bombed Friday night into Saturday morning. Then he supposedly returns to the United States and dies at home. Here's the problem. The train that leaves Kyiv to take you back to Poland goes at 7:45. And understand, this train is how, remember when Macron, Keir Starmer, and Merz were all on the train, doing blow or something. Ursula von der Leyen, she takes the train. Joe Biden, he took the train. The train is the main way in and out of Kyiv, because the only flights that go in and out are these medical emergency flights that are hauling cadavers and wounded Western soldiers. So the train leaves around 8 a.m. from Kyiv, 10-hour train. So it gets back to Warsaw around 5 p.m. 5 p.m. is around 10 a.m. Washington, D.C. time, maybe 11 a.m. Okay? So then he catches the plane. The earliest the plane probably would have left would have been, again, if you're just following the normal route, you leave at 12 noon. What's 10 hours on top of 12 noon? That takes it to 10 p.m. Washington, D.C. time, right? The 911 call was placed at 8:30 p.m. So if his plane doesn't land till like 10 p.m., how is it that he's already died at 8:30 p.m.?
Yeah. It doesn't seem possible.
The numbers don't make sense. Now, what would be a way to get his quote body back in time for an 8:30 death announcement is if he either suffered a heart attack in Kyiv or he was wounded in Kyiv and the wounds proved fatal. But he died. He was dead before he got back to his house, because there's no way in hell that if you take the train and take the plane, because the plane flight from Warsaw itself is at least 10 hours, 10 and a half hours, because you're flying into headwinds going east to west. It's not like when you fly west to east, you get to travel a little quicker. That plane, the earliest that plane could have landed would have been.
In any case, hopefully it was painful. Yeah, well, he's gone now. He won't be encouraging Trump to launch any more new wars. Let's be happy about that.
If everything had gone smoothly with no problem, 9 p.m. That's still 30 minutes before the 911 phone call comes. Oh, we've got there's a medical issue here, a sudden illness. Yeah, lead poisoning. So it's.
You think he might have been poisoned?
No, I don't know. All I know is the story that they placed the 911 call.
That's why there's so many conspiracy theories in the world. The media keeps publishing narratives that, if you examine them closely, are not possible.
8:30 p.m. and he had somehow died between. Trump said he talked to him at 7 p.m. and then by 8:30 p.m. he's dropped dead. It's a lie. It's not true. Given what the train schedules are, those search it online. Don't take my word for it. Search online what the plane flights are, whether it's a scheduled plane flight or it's a military, if it's some military plane detailed to carry Lindsey Graham back and forth. It's just you don't overcome geography and physics. So the earliest the plane could have gotten there, back in the United States, was 10 p.m. at night. You could, under another scenario, get there at midnight. Well, he's by 10 p.m. he's already been dead, 2.5 hours, or an hour and a half. So the story we're getting is nonsense. It's not true.
What's your theory?
No.
Speculative theory.
I'm not doing speculation. I'm dealing with the facts. And the facts are he's dead, and the claim that he died at home is not true. If he traveled the normal way back from Poland, there's no way he could have been back in his home by 7 p.m. Impossible.
Okay, I think I'm going to end this Iran section here for today. It's We're heading back towards full-scale war. It will never be as intense as it was during the first 40 days because the United States has withdrawn a lot of its assets from the region. But there could still be plenty of bombing. And there's a chance in the next 10 days that Trump launched some absolutely foolish ground invasion. We'll have to wait for that. If it doesn't happen in the next 10 days, then I think the ground invasion is permanently off the table. We'll have to see. Sneezed. Anyway, this will be on YouTube. Like and subscribe. Can watch on Kick or Twitch. And I'll see you next video. Bye.